All right, hello everyone. You're listening to Castbitten, a Dungeon Synth podcast, and I'm the host Trev. And today I'll be speaking with the talented and the skilled Avery. Avery has a dark ambient dungeon synth project called Disquieting, and that's entirely their own. And then on top of that, they also play bass and do lead vocals in their metal band Geiger. You just heard their song "Looming Shape in the Distance" from their Disquieting release, "The Ruins of Conscious." Outside of music, Avery's a really accomplished visual artist as well, in addition to a bunch of other works that they have online on their website and everything. Avery also did the cover art to my full-length album, Seize It With Thine Own Hands. Working with Avery was a really cool experience. I'm not a visual art guy, I don't make visual art, and I feel like I learned a ton about the process from them, so that was really exciting. So yeah, welcome on, Avery. It's nice to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. That was a really nice introduction. I appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. It's straight from the heart. Oh no, go on. What was that?
Sorry to be this guy. I did have to correct you on one small thing though. The band is actually pronounced Geiger.
Oh no. Okay, well I'm glad you said something. We'll leave it in. No editing. It's Geiger. I'll slap myself on the wrist there. Geiger. Okay, and for the audio listeners, it's Giger.
Yeah, and it's no problem. Literally everybody makes that mistake.
I'm sure
so
that's a personal, a sore spot.
Yeah.
Well, that's all good. But yeah, I was saying I've got the the physical copy of the Caesar with Einon's Hands cover. I just leave that bad boy up on the wall above my computer, so when I'm clacking away making Dungeon Synth, I can look up at it, get a little inspiration. So yeah, it's a really nice thing to have.
Yeah, that's really awesome, man. And thank you again for trusting me with your vision through the whole process.
For sure, it was a cool process. I don't know if any listeners have ever done something like that. It's kind of unique, but like I mentioned, I have no abilities with making visual art. So I found Avery online and was talking to them, and I feel like we both have to trust each other so much. For me, it's like I worked on this music, and I like a big elements to cover art, and I'm trying to explain like what's going on in my head for how I kind of see it, but I don't know how to explain it. I don't even know exactly what I see, and Avery was just able to take that in and roll with it and make something cool. So yeah, I think the peak of the cover art is that Avery sent me a meme the other day that someone made with it. I thought that was super funny. I don't know, how does that feel for you when you like really work hard on something and then you see it in like a goofy but very public way?
So, um, just the fact that I even got to do something like this is something that I've always wanted to do, and now I'm finally starting to make some headway into doing that. So, thank you again. But
Yeah.
but yeah, that was I had never seen my artwork in a meme before. So I guess that's like the next step, the upper echelon of making it into the art world, I guess.
Absolutely, the next rung on the ladder. So I was thinking about how to do the interview because I talk about music a lot. For me, the art's almost the most interesting.
Yeah.
I was thinking, should I like do them in separate sections? But I kind of want to just ask questions about them together, and then because I'm sure for you, I imagine that they're very like tied together, right?
Oh
It's
yeah.
both the creative part of you, and it's just being expressed maybe in different ways.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of cross pollination that happens between the artwork and the music. Obviously, there's different ways of going about both, but both of them come from similar places.
Okay, okay. So your website mentions that as you make both like visual and audio art, you try to, as you say, explore the darker aspects of nature, history, and dreams. Can you maybe talk a little bit more about that and talk about like what that looks like as you're doing that exploration and how it finds its way and expresses itself through all the art that you make? What's going on there?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, like you said, is nature, history, and dreams. Those are the big three important things.
Okay.
It's about really trying to connect with whatever force or forces that link those together and kind of pervade our lives in a probably more subconscious than conscious way. Um, yeah, with nature, obviously, nature is a living thing. It's a force, and it's something that affects us constantly. How we go through about our lives in the past and in the future. Um,
Right.
and obviously with history, um, especially more so with some of my visual art, a little bit of the music too. But yeah, I think it's important that everybody understands where we come from and you know what to do and more importantly what not to do going forward
Right.
in the
Yeah.
future. Like I've drawn portraits of Ted Bundy and Rasputin.
Right. I remember seeing those on your website. So those definitely tie into history there.
Yeah,
You feel like it's
absolutely.
like you think like the lessons around their story is maybe something worth um I don't know, keeping around through art maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely interesting. But obviously it's not necessarily about glorifying, you know, glorifying the things that they did. It's more about understanding um, where where we come from and understanding the darkness that's around us and that can be inside all of us. And when drawing those two portraits, and when I'm just really drawing anything in general, I don't try to go for the most obvious, um, I guess, the most obvious stance.
Mm-hmm.
I try to find, I'm trying to find stuff that's um, informal aspects, line, shape, form, that sort of thing. I try to find um, the more dynamic things, and then I also try to look at that same thing from a contextual standpoint too, about why they have this look, why Rasputin has these piercing eyes, or the
Oh, wow.
or that Ted Bundy drawing that I did of what really is behind that facial expression he made in the courtroom in that particular day, and what all that
Right.
could
It's not
mean.
just like a bust of him. It's a very it seems intentional that you chose that expression in that image.
Right. And that sort of thing comes to mind when I'm writing music too, whether it be Disquieting or writing with the guys in Giger too. And then the dreams part is much more from a personal place for me, obviously.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'll just have some, obviously, dreams during the night while I sleep, but then there'll just be these random moments that flash before my eyes for like a split second during the day. And I wish I could put it in a more eloquent way, but um, my initial thing, or my initial response to seeing that sort of thing is like, that's really cool, or that's really scary, or something like that.
You
But
try to just get whatever reaction you had there and work it out into your music and your art.
right, so yeah, obviously there's more to it than there's more to the finished product than it just being cool. I mean, obviously want it to be that too,
Of course, yeah.
but yeah, I really try to explore a lot of the hows and whys of you know how that image, or in the case of music, the melodic motif, why that came to me, and how I can expand on that.
Oh, that's really cool. That's some really interesting insight.
Thank you.
Um, something so with the title "The Ruins of Conscience," I feel like that can relate to all three of those. Was that pretty intentional? Were you trying to capture those three pillars, or is there something else that you were thinking of specifically when you picked that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It was all very intentional, but and this is probably a very backwards way of going about it, but the cover art actually came first.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I made that drawing based off of some ideas about just consciousness, and um, how someone can interact with different people, especially on a not literal living plane.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, when I was writing the music for the album, The Ruins of Conscience, I just felt drawn back to that image and to that phrase. And what The Ruins of Conscience, the album, actually is I guess a very loose, abstract concept throughout of entering the ruins of what's left of someone's mind after, it could be a physical death or maybe a spiritual death, and just being a sightseer of what's left behind after that.
I see. That's really interesting, and I can see how the cover kind of tells that story.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and that's actually something I'd written in my notes to ask later, but it's so relevant now. Was about uh, like visual and musical art, which one may come first, or if they ever come simultaneously. I know a lot of visual artists will listen to music while they draw. It's really interesting to hear that you draw and the art influences your music as well.
Uh,
Is that something that always happens?
Oh yeah, there's definitely, at least with Disquieting, there's definitely a lot of back and forth, especially
Mm.
lately. But yeah, I'm trying to think of the right way to put it. Yeah, there's just the darkness that pervades my artwork and my music. It goes, like I said, it goes back and forth. Um, I personally don't really consider myself one more than the other, although I will say art came first in my life. I started
Interesting.
I started drawing. I started drawing a bunch of superheroes when I was real little, like 3 or 4,
Yeah.
because my dad still has this huge comic book collection of comics from the late '60s all the way up to the early '90s. So
Okay.
I got my start drawing, the classic Marvel superheroes like Spider-Man, Wolverine, Captain America, the Fantastic Four, stuff like that. Um, and then it just kind of grew from there as I got older. I started getting more into more fine art. Obviously you learn about the big names like Van Gogh, Dali, and
Hmm.
then I started forming my own voice when I was getting to be into my teenage years. About to be an adult, and that's about the same time I discovered music.
Hmm.
Um, I'm naturally a bass player. That's my first instrument,
Okay.
and then from there, I learned how to I learned how to play guitar, and then drums, and then keyboards was actually the most recent one. So, you know,
Oh, that's interesting. Because
so
I know
sorry.
on Disquieting, it's you list what instruments are what on what track, and it's all keyboards on everything.
Yeah. So this disquieting is definitely my electronic music
Hmm.
outlet. But I didn't want it to be just solely keyboards, and obviously no disrespect to any of the dungeon synth or dark ambient or other electronic music artists that just use keyboards. um, but that's not where I come from initially. I still wanted to incorporate some of what I already knew into the music that I'm making now. But I was kind of surprised at um, honestly kind of how little I was doing with the other instruments.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from. I when I originally bought like a computer to make music on, the idea was to flesh out my acoustic music with a few digital instruments here and there. And I yeah, like playing the keys, having all sorts of sounds kind of hooks you and it's easy to just dive into that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the thing that really won me over as I got older with a lot of electronic music in general, but especially ambient music, and in the last few years, dungeon synth, is just the fact that it's just so different from a lot of the stuff you see and hear on a regular basis, and it a very uh, has a very transportive power to take you to this place that you know can be a lot more fantastic than some of the stuff we
Yeah.
see in the day to day.
Yeah, and I think that lines up well with some of what seems like your goals with music of the things you want to explore. And I think with Ruins of Conscious, yeah, that really works out. There's that synergy there with like the topics that you want to talk about and then what you're able to do within the genre. And I think that using the physical instruments really helps your music stand out and kind of gives it an interesting edge to it.
Thank you. Yeah, I was hoping it would go over well when I finally put it out, because you go through on like Bandcamp or some other just
Hmm.
other websites in general, and you see a lot of dungeon synth guys specifically um, saying I use this keyboard or these 2 or 3 keyboards, and I've seen some seen some kind of more elitist guys being like, this is only supposed to be like keyboard music. It's not the same when you add this other stuff. But
For sure, yeah.
I try not to limit myself to just one particular thing. Like dungeon synth is obviously probably the big genre tag that's on the music that I do now with Disquieting, but I wouldn't call it just dungeon synth music, especially considering when I first started the project, it was not dungeon synth at all.
It was more focusing on that dark ambient side, or
Oh
just
yeah,
experimental in general.
yeah. It was much more on the dark ambient side, and I was incorporating some more like a little bit more like power electronics and like noise stuff in it too.
Cool. Yeah.
Um, yeah,
I
so
think a
that's.
nice. Oh yeah, yeah. Go on.
I'm sorry. But yeah, it was like I said, I started off from this much more like dark ambient and like a little bit
Hmm.
noisier side when I started the project, but um, kind of put it on the back burner for a little while because I was just having a hard time trying to find inspiration through the noise and um, plus the other thing too was things are starting to pick up more with my artwork and Giger too. So
Hmm.
put it on the back burner for a little while, and then when I started actually seriously sitting down and listening to Dungeon Synth, it's like a light switch immediately flicked on, and I just had this huge surge of inspiration coming through, and that's where a lot of the that's where most of the material for the Ruins of Conscious came from. Is finally having Dungeon Synth click with me.
Oh, it's beautiful. Yeah, I feel like it's got a way of getting the juices flowing for sure. And to your earlier point, I feel like we're fortunate that a lot of the listeners in the genre are okay with things slipping away from the strictest definitions of the genre. Like, I've noticed there's been some labels that I like, but I don't feel comfortable sending my music to because mine's kind of in your realm where it's not like strictly like the classic dungeon synth sound. It's just kind of it's dark and it's synthy and it's fantasy-ish, and it's enough that I feel like the community totally accepts that type of music for the most part. As you mentioned, there's always going to be elitist people out there, but yeah, it's nice that the community is pretty willing to have that.
Yeah, that's something I really appreciate about the community in general. It's just how everybody's so welcoming. And I was listening back to the episode you did with Fogweaver, which that was great, by the
Oh
way.
yeah. Oh, thank you.
Um, and you guys were talking about how the resurgence of Dungeon Synth is is very and I might be getting my words mixed up or paraphrasing a bunch,
No worries.
but is very fluid, and there's not a set in stone definition of what this kind of music is supposed to be, and that's something that I really appreciate in terms of being an artist, visual and musical, but also uh, being a being a listener of the music itself, because I'll go through on like Bandcamp and I'll find something new that just floors me like almost every day.
Ah, that's so lovely. I can relate to that. Yeah. And there's so much out there just waiting to be found, which is really nice.
And I'm glad you sent me your music also, because that's definitely probably in my probably like my top 10 of like favorite releases
Oh, that's
of
so
of
kind.
this. Yeah,
I appreciate it.
yeah, absolutely.
Speaking of like, I don't know, finding success in music, so Disquieting is getting a tape release through Voices of the Ainur. Um, I mean, first off, just congrats. That's really cool accomplishment. I was psyched when you told me. I was psyched to see that the wheels are like really in motion now. Um, do you want to just talk a little bit about that, about how that process went and how it feels to get everything together for that?
Yeah, absolutely. So first thing was I keep to the people that I had told before I made the official announcement. I kept making the joke of well, I didn't think I was going to be releasing music on tape of all things, but here we are.
Yeah, here we
Because
are.
it I was really surprised when I was getting into the community and checking out more. underground metal, but also a lot of the dungeon synth and dark electronic, dark ambient stuff. I was really surprised at how heavy people emphasized wanting to hear this music on tape.
Yeah, they love it.
Yeah, I just I'd heard so many times growing up that tape was not coming back, and people were so surprised that vinyl even made a comeback.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I did the digital release first, and then my preferred medium of music enjoyment is CD, which I know a lot of people hate on CDs
No,
as of
yeah,
late,
CD's good.
but that's what I've always liked. To me, it's the best of all of both worlds, really. Um, but yeah, so I put the CD out, and then I was like, well, I see a lot of people really like tapes, so let me see what I can do to get this music out on tape. And I saw Voices of the Unner on Reddit about they had a podcast, and they had just started putting out tapes on their label, and they were picking up traction. And I listened to a lot of the stuff on there. I was like, this seems really cool. And I just kind of worked up the nerve to send an email out to Paul that runs the label. And I just kind of thought, well, best case scenario, he'll see it and he'll just be like, no, or, oh, well, I mean, we'll see. Maybe we'll get around to it eventually. But yeah, it was a real surprise and a huge confidence boost to see that he really liked it and wanted to go ahead and put it out on tape. And now I have my copies, and the label is putting it out in November. So I'm really excited and thankful that they're doing that. And I'm hoping, obviously I'm hoping people will pick it up.
Yeah, that's super cool. And you're right. Like it takes a lot of nerve to come to an existing party and say, hey, I think I'm good enough. Can you do something with that? That's so hard to do. So for you to have done that is great. And then it pays off. It's really nice to hear.
And yeah, what really surprised me is just, like I said, the fact that he liked it so much and wanted to put it out, because I had already gotten used to or not, or really the worst thing, in my opinion, not hearing anything back on the visual art front and on the music front.
One thing I was wondering with that, so if I remember from the notes right, you got the album professionally mastered for the original release. Did you do a different master for the tape version? And if so, did you handle that, or did they handle that? Or did you just kind of roll with what you had? What was that like?
Yeah, so I recorded everything here at home in my makeshift studio rehearsal space, which is the den in my house.
Okay.
But yeah, so I recorded everything to my computer here at home, and then did the mixing on my own, which I'm glad it turned out as good as it did, because I am not a professional sound engineer in the slightest. Yeah. But I had read so many times and heard so many times that mastering is really super duper important to the final product. So I reached out to Lucas Smith, who is the main sound engineer and owner of Lucky Sound Studios up in Fort Payne, Alabama, where Giger recorded our debut album.
Oh, cool.
And he's such a really just nice dude. He knows exactly what he's doing. He comes from a well-versed musical background, and he put up with the band's BS for a full 48 hours because we recorded it in that little bit of time, because that's all the money we had.
Yeah, understandable.
But yeah, he was just a pleasure to work with. So he was the person that immediately came to my mind, and yeah, he mastered everything, got it back to me in really surprisingly quick time, and it sounded great. So yeah, I put the digital out and the CD out on that, and he did a separate master for streaming versus physical releases, and
Oh,
so
really?
yeah,
It's
and
very professional.
oh yeah, he's the real deal. Anybody who wants to go record stuff or wants to send their stuff off to him,
Yeah.
um, definitely send it off to him. He's such a great dude, and he's not paying me to say this, by the way, either. He's just a really cool dude.
No, Chris Bitten's been compromised. We're taking payouts.
but yeah, so he did those two separate masters for me, and he got them back to me super quick. So yeah, for Bandcamp and Spotify and all the other streaming services, I did use his streaming master, and then the CD and the tape master that's coming from Voices. Yeah, they're using that other master.
Oh, okay, great. So, I was looking more at kind of your CV and like your past experiences with that. I I noticed that you've done a lot of art exhibitions. How do you compare that with like a live musical performance? I know you maybe haven't done. I guess that's a good question. Have you done live musical performance with Disquieting? I know it's difficult with this genre,
Not with Disquieting, no.
but with Giger you have.
Oh yeah, we played a bunch of live shows over the past 6 years. We've gone on a couple tours, and playing a live show is just one of the greatest feelings in the world, no matter what kind of music that you're
Absolutely,
doing.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, that's something I would like to do with Disquieting, but it's really a matter of the stars aligning in just the right way to be able to do it live, because I don't want to sacrifice anything. I want the live experience, if I do one, to be just as immersive, if not more so, than listening to the tape or the CD or
Yeah.
listening to it on streaming.
Have you thought about how you would execute that? If you would have a band or like more of a visual thing where you're hitting play on a pre-made mix? What do you think you do there?
My first my my first inclination would be to try to get some kind of live band together, but
Okay.
there's not a whole lot of people around where I live to do that sort of thing. We were scrambling to get a new drummer for Giger recently, which we finally
Really?
got one, thankfully, and he's great. But yeah, I'd like to do like a live band, so that way it feels more natural. It feels more present, and obviously be a lot more high energy too. Obviously not the same kind of high energy you would see or hear at like a metal show like Giger playing, but still that really high energy. Everybody's super involved. Everybody's super focused.
I imagine it'd feel
Nonetheless,
tense. It'd be very like a good tension. Like with a full band playing it, there'd be a lot of atmosphere and as you go into like those big hits and shakes with the tambourine and everything. I don't know. I can see that just like building up and building up in the room, and it would be very involved for the audience.
yeah, I would certainly hope so. Anyway, I don't know how well it would. I don't know how well it would go over where I'm at, because Giger gets some blank stares sometimes
Oh,
too.
really?
Yeah, I live in Columbus, Georgia. For anybody who doesn't already know that, I don't know if you've said that already. But
Maybe not. So glad you did.
yeah. But yeah, this is a town that the bar scene is, cover bands and country music, maybe hip hop here and there, and then the underground scene is mainly just a lot of go-to modern hardcore and
Yeah.
punk music, which no disrespect to anybody that that plays or listens to that sort of thing, but just that's what's most popular around here. So I don't know how well Disquieting would go over with that, but I still would like to at least make the attempt to do it live. I bought a second keyboard besides the one I used on the Ruins of Conscience. partially to work on the new material, but also to help with the live performance too. On the
Oh,
ruins,
cool.
yeah, on the Ruins of Conscience, I used a for the maybe 5-6 people that care about this sort of thing. They used or I used a Yamaha Pss 460.
Okay.
One of your more basic kind of like bare bones synthesizers that Yamaha put a bunch out of, and like I want to say like the late 80s all the way up to like the early 2000s or something like that.
Hmm.
Don't quote me on that because I don't know how accurate that is, but that's just I
Yep.
think that's what I read. But yeah, so I used that for all of the Ruins of Conscience. But going forward with the new stuff and maybe eventually um, doing a live performance, I also have now a Korg mini log synthesizer.
Oh, great. Yeah, those are really cool.
Yeah, and it's definitely been a huge game changer. Over the course of the past few months, I've been writing more and more songs that are more layered and definitely have, at least in my opinion, have more atmosphere, more so than what I did on the Ruins of Conscience.
Awesome. So when you talk about these synths, it makes me ask, were you working all with like onboard sounds from the synths? Did you use any MIDI when you were recording?
No, I didn't use any MIDI whatsoever.
Wow, that's interesting. That's very distinct, I think, within the genre.
Thank you. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
but yeah, it was all performed live to a microphone plugged into my computer. Um, both the keyboard was mic'd up and
Hmm.
played around with. The keyboard has different presets that can be adjusted somewhat. So I would use, I go to a specific preset to get that initial bass sound that I wanted, and then change some of the settings here and there to get that exact dialed in sound that I was looking for.
Wow, that's super interesting. What were you recording into? Like, were you using an audio workstation still, or I don't know, something else?
Um, I was recording straight into Audacity, and
Wow.
that probably sounds super lame,
No.
but um, I'm just I just always get I always brace for kind of brace for impact when I say that because I hear so many people talk down on Audacity is like, oh, you should be using Reaper or Logic or Cubase, and I liked Reaper okay, but I might upgrade to that eventually. But I've just used Audacity because it seems, at least to me, very user friendly and it was free, so can't
Yeah.
go wrong with that.
I totally know what you mean about maybe getting judged for when you say Audacity, but especially with how you're recording it with this emphasis on all the real life instruments, nothing virtual or emulated. Like I don't see a reason not to use Audacity, and if you're comfortable with it and it works, you're not doing as much tweaking in the DAW as someone working with MIDI may.
Right.
So I don't know. You got the stamp of approval from me. If anything, that
Thank you.
just adds to the lore. It's very interesting.
Thank you. Yeah. Plus, too, it would definitely be a big learning curve for me to do the MIDI stuff. Not that I'm not opposed to trying it eventually in the
Hmm.
future, or going the other way. That would be probably just as much or more difficult. Doing like some of the real old school guys recording it straight to tape.
Yeah, yeah, that's totally something I've no experience with. As far as I'm concerned, it's magic when people do that. They're especially with like 4 tracks or 8 tracks, they're like bouncing tracks into another track, and there's such a limited number. It's super interesting and super mystical to me,
Oh,
I
oh
think.
yeah, I had looked it up uh, several times, um, and it just was like um, it's just like the guys that I imagine that do that sort of thing, um, getting what was it? But they're deciphering a ancient dead language or something.
Yeah, yeah. It's like speaking Latin.
Yeah.
That's very accurate, honestly. So as a multi-instrumentalist, do you have a relationship with music theory? Is that something that you feel booked up on, or do you kind of just play it out by ear more often?
Yeah, so I do have a somewhat of a music theory background. I I took a couple music theory classes in high school, and that helped a
Oh,
pretty good bit.
cool.
Um, but that was solely just like learning to read music, how key signatures work, how
Hmm.
how to read time signatures, how to modulate between keys, stuff like that. But that it was all like just pen and paper on the computer. Um, Instrument wise, I picked it up just by myself. I'm like 98% self taught with a little bit of help from some friends that have been playing a little bit longer.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that that's a way a lot of, especially a lot of, I like musicians that play out a lot. That's how a lot of them learn theory. I think from someone that knows a little more theory, or
Yeah,
at least
and
the theory that's relevant to what they do.
yeah, and the music theory is it is definitely an active, conscious thought when I'm writing stuff. Obviously, I think about what key signature I'm in. I make sure am I playing in time,
Yeah.
and obviously I don't go anything. I don't get into anything too crazy, like the jazz add nine chords or
Sure.
something
Sure.
like that. That's a little bit above my head. Um, but I feel pretty confident in the abilities that I have now to write and play what I'm writing and playing right now. But yeah, those music theory classes in high school was about the extent of it. But what I did do was I did go to art school. Um,
I was hoping to dive into that next,
yeah,
actually. So you have a bachelor's in art, if I remember right.
yes, I have a.
Okay.
Make
How
sure
do you
I'm.
feel like that, or I guess in what ways do you feel like that prepared you for? Because I think art is your primary job. How do you feel like art school prepared you for it, and how do you feel like it didn't prepare you for it? Maybe things that you felt like were a waste of time, or things that you feel like would have been relevant that you didn't learn in school. What are all your thoughts there?
Yeah, so I have my degree is Bachelor's of Science in art education. I'm looking at my degree hanging up on the wall right now. Make
Okay.
sure I say that right. But yeah. So my day job is I'm a elementary school art teacher. Um, so, but yeah, being in art school, I was in art school for 5 years for technically a 4 year degree.
Oh.
But not because I was a bad student or anything. It's just I'll never forget my advisor telling me. The only difference between an art education track versus a studio art track is you just have more homework, which that was most certainly the case.
Really?
Oh yeah, the reason why it took 5 years was because um, it was a like a full course load every semester. I would have only finished in 4 years if I had taken a like the maximum amount of classes, which was 18 credit hours.
Oh
If I had
yeah.
done that every single semester, and I had already moved out and was working a full time job at the same time, so
Right.
and trying to play in a band and maintain a relationship with my girlfriend, now fiance.
Oh man. Yeah,
So
18 credit hours on top of all that is a ton to ask for.
yeah, I did it once and never again. So yeah, but getting into the specifics of art school, my art school's experience was obviously a little bit different because I was preparing to be a art teacher and not just a studio
Right.
artist. So I took a lot of the same studio art courses, but not every single one that the studio art majors had to take, and
Hmm.
it definitely helped expand my vocabulary and my thinking about all arts in general. Obviously, visual art being the first, but arts in general.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I feel like it only helped me get just a little bit better at actually making art. Because at least with my experience and from what I've heard and seen and read from other people and other sources, art school nowadays is more focused on art as an idea rather than art as a practice. So,
It's less mechanical skill there,
right,
maybe.
exactly.
I see. Yeah.
It was not a whole lot of focus on, the elements and principles of visual art and trying to make a unified technical composition, and more so about, what are you trying to say with this artwork? How is this a reflection on you or a reflection on society or whatever
Interesting.
goal or the
Yeah.
assignment objective was. So that was for some classes. I'm a my focus as a visual artist is illustration and painting. So in those classes, that was it was all pretty helpful. But I did have to take some other studio classes like sculpture and ceramics, and
Oh
I
wow.
did not care about those at all. As a matter of
You
fact,
didn't take away anything from those, maybe?
ceramics, absolutely not. I am not a
Oh
ceramicist
man.
whatsoever, and that was the only class in college that I got a C in.
Really? See
everything everything
ceramics.
else I got
Wow.
an A or at least a high B. But yeah, ceramics did not do it for
Just didn't
me.
have the passion for it.
No, not at all. But yeah, so
Wow.
art school definitely helped my thinking when it comes to creating art, whether it be visual or musical. But in practice, a lot of what I'm doing now came from just trying new things and learning some stuff on my own after I finished school.
Okay. Yeah, I can see how all that ties together. It's something that I hear a lot. Some of it is really relevant, some of it not so much.
Yeah.
But sounds like overall, seems like it worked out, right?
Oh yeah. It. You were asking before about how if I consider myself, more of an artist or a musician, and I personally see myself an equal amount of both. But I
Yeah.
guess technically on paper, I'm more of an artist because that's what my degree is in, and being an art teacher now, that's what pays most of the bills. So,
Sure, yeah.
but
Something with that I was kind of curious about. So I always ask people who their musical influences are, especially with the genre, and I'm interested in that for you. But kind of like bigger picture, are there artists that influence art projects the same way like musicians will really like a handful of bands and that shapes their music, or is it a little more general than that? Um, do you make something and think this is like, I had been looking at X artists and really enjoying it, and then this came out? I don't know what's going on there.
oh yeah, there's definitely a lot of back and forth of my favorite artists influencing my visual artwork and my favorite musicians and bands influencing my music, and then
Mm-hmm.
visual artists influencing some of my music, and especially bands influencing my artwork. Because like you were saying before, I've always got music playing, especially when I'm
Yeah.
working on a new piece. Um,
So it all just kind of swirls together into one big thing that's just Avery's art.
oh yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah. So I mean, did you want me to talk about some or mention some of my favorite visual artists and
Yeah,
musicians and
if
stuff?
you could just name drop both sides, musical and visual, I would be interested in hearing that.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Uh, visual art. Obviously, I lean more heavy on the surreal and the darker stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Salvador Dali is one of my favorites. Giorgio di Chirico, he was an Italian artist that was a big influence on a lot of the surrealist artists like Dali and Magritte later
Okay.
on. Gustave Doré, he was the one that did the drawings for the Divine Comedy.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's super interesting. Yeah.
And then I can't remember his whole name, but Kittelsen. He was a Norwegian artist. A lot of the black metal and dungeon synth guys like to use his artwork, like this third and fourth Burzum albums. Those are his paintings, and the I believe Juan Graven's album, that's a Kittelsen painting also. But yeah, so him, a lot of the romantic era artists like
Hmm.
Caspar David Friedrich, JMW Turner, um, and yeah, just a lot of. I mean, I could go on and on and on for hours just on that. But yeah, just a lot of artists that um, not only push their compositions formally, but also push them contextually, specifically in relation to the darkness or the surreal or the spiritual, the divine, what have you, stuff like that.
That is so cool.
Yeah,
And I'm uh I'm super uncultured, so the only one I recognize is Dali. So I feel like I've got a big list now to check out. That's
yeah.
really, really cool.
Oh yeah. Like I said, I could go on for forever, and um, yeah, I guess a joke I make all the time. I guess 5 years of art school was good for something. but but yeah, so those are some of my favorite visual artists, and then musically, I listen to just about everything under the sun, minus country. But uh, I come mainly from a metal background, as a lot of guys who make this sort of music do. But I come from mainly uh, like a doom background.
Hmm.
So bands like Sleep, Candlemass, Solitude Eternus, Crowbar, Acid Bath, those kind of bands, and obviously some music from other genres, like obviously Secret Stairways, and
Yeah.
I'm probably going to pronounce this wrong. Japortit.
Good hustle. Good try.
I tried. I don't speak any of the. I don't speak Norwegian or Swedish or anything like
Right,
that.
right. No judgment here. I'm the same. Like I said, I'm uncultured.
But that one. But yeah. So that, but also some other artists like I really love dark jazz. I don't know
Dark
if you've ever.
jazz.
Yeah. So dark jazz is basically take like smooth and cool jazz, and then mix it with dark ambient and doom
Okay.
metal music.
I'm Googling now, and the alternative title is Noir Ambient, which is
Yes.
just as good. I love that.
Yeah, and my favorite band in that genre is this is a German name, so I may not be pronouncing it right again,
Mhm.
but Borin Under Club of Gore.
Borin Underclub of Gore.
Yeah. Boren is still in German, but the rest is and the Club of Gore.
Oh, okay. I see.
Yeah.
In the club of. Okay.
And specifically their album Black Earth.
Oh, well, I'll be saving that one for sure.
Oh yeah, it's
I'm already interested here.
oh yeah, it's great. But yeah, I just like I was saying earlier, I don't try to kind of pigeonhole myself into one specific genre. Now with what I'm doing with Disquieting, Dungeon Synth is the biggest influence, but
Nice.
those sort of things, and then some other artists and other albums like the classic ambient stuff like Brian Eno and Tangerine Dream um, play a big role, and then Wolves in the Throne Room. They did my favorite album of theirs is actually their one not black metal album is it's kind of somewhere in between drone and dark ambient, and maybe even a little bit of dungeon synth if you trying to
Yeah, I can
stretch
see all
it a
that
little
creeping
bit.
in.
But yeah, I like to, I like to pull from a lot of just a lot of different sources.
Yeah, I think that that comes out in your music really well.
Thank you.
I've got one more thing I want to touch on before we head out, as we're kind of approaching an hour here. And just because I brought it up and I kind of got myself distracted asking other questions, but we are talking about live performance. I know with it is Giger, right? I'm pronouncing it right. That
Yes, Giger.
okay?
Yeah.
With Giger, you've played out. Um, with art exhibitions, what is that like? You're not entirely on stage with everyone looking at you, but my experience, you're usually at a booth with all of your work laid out in front of you, and while you're not performing, it's being observed the way that music is. Can you kind of compare and contrast and just the art exhibition with music, and also just kind of talk about what it's like to be the guy behind the booth?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So the biggest difference being is I'm not shirtless screaming my head off at the art gallery,
Okay, that's fair.
but maybe that would make for a good performance
Maybe.
art piece. But no, but no, it's so what happens at art shows is the my piece or pieces, and if I'm able to have prints out too, is you on the wall or in the booth or on the table in front of me, and I just kind of hover around my booth or my area, and um, people will come up and I'll talk to them about my work and where it
Yeah.
comes from, and go around and commingle with some of the other artists that are there, talk about what they like and where they're coming from artistically. Um, but yeah, I will say, kind of going back to the what I was saying before about the town I live in. I'll explain what something is in the artwork, or what kind of message I'm trying to convey, and it does kind of go over people's heads a lot of
Oh no.
times. um, but it is definitely still a performance in that it's the music and the art are coming from the same place, so I'm really just trying to I guess bear my soul and my conscience out for the world to see. And yeah, like I said, with music and art, some people get it, some people don't. But that's
Right.
just
Yeah, there's certainly got to be a level of vulnerability in both of them.
oh yeah, definitely. And in both cases, it has its highs and it has its lows. In both cases, I'll be at a show, and there'll be a bunch of people there, and people will come up and view the artwork or hear what we're playing on stage, and come up to us afterwards, or come up to me afterwards and say, "Oh, that was really cool. It reminded me of this." And then on the flip side of that, there'll be like maybe 5 or 6 people there that just kind of give you that 1,000-yard stare.
Oh, that's really interesting. It's neat to hear. I don't know. It's such a. I've been around music for so long, and other art virtually not at all. So it's nice to hear about the one I've got no experience in, but from the perspective of someone that still gets the one that I do. Um, you don't always get that combo, so it's nice.
Yeah, and it is kind of hard to talk to people about it, because um, I have friends that are excuse me, friends that are musicians and friends that are artists, but not a lot of not a whole lot of overlap in between. So, and that's kind of part of the reason why I started doing Disquieting in the first place, was because I wanted to have something that I could just put all of my creative energy into,
Nice,
and
yeah.
for better or for worse.
Yeah, well, it feels very personal. the release. So I can see that working out.
Yeah, and obviously, once the artwork is out there for everybody, I'm a big proponent of the viewer, the listener, getting their own message from it. So, me explaining, what the Ruins of Conscience is about, that may not be what it sounded like to somebody else, and that's just as cool too. But yeah, some of the reactions I got from people when I first showed them the Ruins of Conscience was it's like, man, this is really sad. This sounds really lonely. Are you okay?
I can see that. I can see where they're coming from. That's funny. Yeah, well, I don't know. I think that we've covered everything I've got in my notes. It's so funny to. I've sent like 100 messages to Avery, probably, maybe more. I don't know. It's funny to sit down and talk, right?
Oh yeah.
It's been so long, such a long time coming. Yeah, I don't know. I felt always like a little hesitation before an interview, so it was an extra level of comfort there that it wasn't like totally a new person.
Yeah, and again, thank you for having me on. I really, really appreciate it. And I really, like I said, I love the album, and I really enjoyed the first few episodes that you put out. I'm looking forward to more of them.
Oh,
And hopefully
thank you so much.
Hopefully I didn't botch this one too bad.
This was great. This was so good. Um, I guess before we go, what links do you want to share to people? And also, when can they get your album on tape? When does that guy come out?
Yeah, so Disquieting, you can find Disquieting on Bandcamp is just Disquieting. Obviously, the album is The Ruins of Conscience. You can download the digital now and buy the CD now. I do have a few tapes that were sent to me personally that I have on the Bandcamp. Once those are gone, then the rest of them will be out through Voices in November. And then you can find Disquieting on Facebook, and Instagram is just Disquieting Music. My artwork, I have the website. It's just averybradshaw.com, or you might have to type in averybradshaw.squarespace.com. But yeah, Facebook and Instagram. Facebook is just Avery Bradshaw Art. Instagram is APB_art94. And then I guess I'll do a quick Giger plug too, if you don't mind.
Yeah, please.
Okay, thank you. So
it's the least I can do after getting the name wrong.
Oh no, you're fine. Like I said, everybody makes that mistake.
Yep.
We actually, quick little funny aside, we actually put the pronunciation on the Bandcamp page of the
I love
album
that.
itself.
Just leaning into it.
Yeah, but yeah. So Giger is on Bandcamp and Spotify and all that other good stuff. We have an album out called Submit to Reality. I'm the bass player and lead vocalist for Giger. We still have a little bit of merch left over from the shows and the tours we had done before. Disquieting is on Spotify and all that other good streaming stuff too. But yeah, that's where you can find all the stuff that I'm involved in. And that was a really long plug, so thank you for letting me do all that.
Absolutely. All right, I guess we'll sign off here. Thank you so much again for coming on, Avery. Super fun talking. And thanks to the listeners for listening.
Oh yeah, thank you, man. It was an honor and a pleasure. Thank you.
Yep. All right, take care.
Thanks.
Alright, hello friends. We just wrapped up such a nice chat with Avery. That's Avery of Dungeon Synth and Dark Ambient project Disquieting, as well as his other band Giger, and of course the guy behind all that wonderful visual art that we spoke of. What a just kind and genuine dude. I'm really so happy to have gotten a chance to speak with him, and I'm happy to be able to share it with all of you. Avery has a website. His website's got his art as well as links to everything that he does. So you can visit that at avery-bradshaw.squarespace.com. You can also find his music directly just at disquieting.bandcamp.com and giger.bandcamp.com. And that's Giger for Giger. Lots of links to keep you busy, plenty of Avery to go around, so be sure to check out all the cool stuff that they do. Also on my end, you can follow Castbitten _ on Instagram, or you can search Castbitten on YouTube. Just keep in the loop about the podcast as well as all of my other projects. As I started the show, I just imagined that the only people who would listen would be people who already knew me, but now I'm getting reports. I'm getting the dossier showing that folks have been sharing the show all over, sharing the show to Facebook groups. I don't know about all sorts of things like that. So thank you so much to those people. That's so cool, and there's no obligation to share the show. So if you do that, that's just really nice of you. But yeah, there might be some people who don't really know anything about me, who just love the artists that we're sharing. So if you're not familiar, I'm Trev. I do this podcast somewhat regularly. It's supposed to be every week, but I get excited and it's more like every 6 days. But yeah, I also make music in addition to the podcast. All of that's just Castbitten, all one word. It's like if a curse bit you, and if you go wherever you listen to music, you can find it there, and it'll find you, and you'll love it because I think it's good music. And yeah, but this isn't the Trev Show, it's the Avery Show today, so even higher priority, before you do any of that, go to avery-bradshaw.squarespace.com, go to Disquieting and Giger, and listen to all the wonderful music, and put your eyeballs on all that wonderful art, and find Avery, and let him know how much you like it. But alright, I had a bit of coffee, I'm rambling at this point. Have a wonderful day. Get out of here. Go outside and take a walk or something. I don't know. It's nice out. It's about to get cold here. I'm in Wisconsin. Our days are numbered. It's not much sunlight to go around after this week, so definitely take advantage of that. Go outside. Go for a hike. Call someone you love and tell them you love them. Yeah, do something good with your day. Alright, take care everyone. Bye.